Hi there. As an owner or a user of a mobile telephone, a cell phone, you're most definitely a subscriber or a consumer to one or more telecom service operators. Did you know that as a consumer to these services, you enjoy certain protection? My name is Favour Mbanu, a 400 level law student at the University of Lagos and an undergraduate intern here at HARLEM Solicitors, and I'm here to talk about consumer protection in the telecommunications sector. The telecommunications sector has proliferated in recent years, especially in developing countries such as Nigeria. This is because telecommunications is a vital engine for the growth and development of any nation, as well as a national critical infrastructure. As more and more persons get connected to telecommunications networks, it becomes increasingly more essential to ensure consumer protection in the telecommunications market. The protection and promotion of consumer interests is a major function of the Nigerian Communications Commission as enshrined in Section 4, Sub B of the Nigerian Communications Act 2003. Consumer protection and quality of service is provided for in Sections 104 to 106 of the Nigerian Communications Act 2003. Who then can be considered to be a consumer? Well, the Nigerian Consumer Protection Council Act defines a consumer as anyone who purchases, uses, maintains, or disposes of products or services. In the telecommunications concept, Section 157 of the Nigerian Communications Act 2003 defines a consumer, a customer, or a subscriber as anyone who subscribes to or uses a communication service. This brings me to my next question. What is consumer protection and why consumer protection? Consumer protection is the act of safeguarding consumer interests as relates to the supply of goods and services. Why consumer protection? Well, the essence of consumer protection is this. More often than not, the customer, the subscriber, the consumer is viewed or seen as the weaker contracting party. Hence, the need to safeguard the consumer's interest against the unfair practices of service providers. On this premise, I will now list out certain rights offered to consumers. The first of which is the right to safety. Consumers ought to be safeguarded against harmful or hazardous products or services. The second right offered to consumers is the right to be informed. Consumers ought to be informed on the quality, the quantity, the price, and the standards of the goods being offered to them, as well as the right to be informed and educated on their consumer protection right. The third right offered to consumers is the right of choice. Consumers ought to be given a wide variety of choices to pick and choose from. We see this with the number of ISPs, the internet service providers, which include Smile, Spectranet, Swift, among others, and the number of mobile number operators, the MNOs, which include 9Mobile, MTN, Airtel, and Glo. The fourth right offered to consumers is the right to seek redress. This is the consumer's right to seek redress for genuine grievances against the service providers. And the fifth right offered to consumers is the right of compensation. This entails that consumers ought to be adequately and fairly compensated for faulty or damaged products or services. Now, specific consumer rights offered to consumers in the telecommunications sphere include, but are not limited to, the right to access to service, the right to good quality of service, the right to protection of consumer or subscriber data, the right to access to emergency contacts, and the right to accurate billing. Now let's talk about various legislation or bodies that govern consumer protection in Nigeria. The first of which is our constitution, the ground norm upon which all other laws in Nigeria gain their validity. Section 37 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended provides for the right to privacy of citizens' homes, correspondences, telephone conversations, and telegraphic communication. For the purpose of telecommunications, we focus on the last two, which is the right to privacy of citizens, telephone conversations, and telegraphic communications. It should, however, be noted that Section 45 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended, provides that this right is not absolute, as the government may and can enact laws against this right for the purpose of public interest. The second body or act that we're going to look at that focuses on consumer protection is none other than the CPC, which is the Nigerian Consumer Protection Council Act. The Nigerian Consumer Protection Council was created in 1992 but became operational or effective in 1999, and it is the apex federal government agency on consumer protection. The next body or act that we're going to discuss is none other than the NCA, which is the Nigerian Communications Act 2003. One major obligation of the Nigerian Communications Commission is to promote and protect the interests of consumers. This is seen in Section 1 Sub G of the Nigerian Communications Act 2003. Now, the Nigerian Communications Act provides that all service providers ought to have something called a consumer code, which is why the Consumer Code of Practice Regulations 2007 was created or established by the NCC as a sort of guide by which all telecom service operators' consumer codes ought to follow. Now, during the course of my research for this video lecture, I came across Entel's Consumer Code of Practice, and it basically covers things such as their service areas, their billing and pricing lists, as well as their sales and marketing activities. Now, certain obligations imposed upon service providers in the Consumer Code of Practice Regulations 2007 rather, include 1, the provision of information. This entails that service providers, upon request by the consumers, ought to provide information on the services that they render in plain and unambiguous terms so that the consumers can understand. Another obligation imposed by the Consumer Code of Practice Regulations 2007 is the provision of advanced warning of anticipated service disruption. That was a mouthful. I'll give an example. I'm an MTN subscriber, and I remember vividly certain occasions where MTN will send a text saying, "Dear customer, we regret to inform you, but from so-so time to so-so time, our services will be down." And then the next text MTN will send is, "Dear customer, we're happy to inform you that our services are back, and we apologize for any inconvenience that may have resulted as a result of our services being down." That's just one example of what all telecom service operators ought to do in relation to advanced warning of anticipated service disruption. Now, let's talk about certain consumer complaints or issues posed by consumers. The enactments and bodies that govern consumer protection in Nigeria are laudable. However, their enactments leave much to be desired. One major cause of dissatisfaction by consumers is that the NCC, the Nigerian Communications Commission, imposes sanctions of fine on service providers who offer poor quality of service. However, the consumers who suffer this poor quality of service do not benefit from the money being paid. Other causes of dissatisfaction raised by consumers include failed calls, poor quality of service, of course, poor network coverage, excessive billing, spam texts and calls, among others. Now, this is not to say that the NCC is not doing its job. Oh, not at all. The NCC does impose sanctions against service providers on consumer-related offenses. And this is not also to say that service providers are the bad guys, in quote. My relationship with telecommunications runs deep. I have an aunt who was a manager in the now defunct Starcoms Telecom. So I can tell you firsthand I can tell you firsthand what service providers do to ensure that consumer protection is upheld. However, the NCA, the Nigerian Communications Act 2003, has not satisfactorily cured the mischief of unsolicited calls and texts that remain the order of the day. In conclusion, we have seen in this lecture that communication, and of course telecommunications, is an integral part of human existence, and this is why consumer protection must be upheld. I would recommend that the NCA be reviewed or amended to provide better for consumer protection. Also, the NCC must be more proactive in ensuring that service providers do the needful and adhere strictly to the provisions of the Nigerian Communications Act 2003. For more information, please visit our website www.harlemsolicitors.com or check out any of our social media handles. I'm talking Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter at Harlem Solicitors. Once again, my name is Favour Mbanu. Thank you for listening.